Hello and welcome to another episode of the Embodied Union podcast. I'm Lindsay.
I'm Charlie.
And today we're going to be talking about relationship check-ins. It's the end of the year and a lot of us as couples are going into the next year and setting it up with some intention, setting it up with something maybe new, but for some maybe it's just like a consolidation and really getting clear about how a year's going to look in
and how
2025.
the year has gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like what's been great, what's been not so great, what do we want to experience more of, what do we want less of. Like it's just a big conversation.
Yeah, and I think too, I just want to preface this as well, is that a relationship check-in like this is really powerful and it can be something that couples do. Some couples might want to do this almost weekly, where they're just like touching base. Charlotte and I tend to do this very often, but what we also did is we just sat down and did it ourselves. And the way that what we found is that it's quite powerful to actually sit down and write it out rather than just have a conversation. So,
because that's what I would say there. I don't think we don't have the sit down formal check-in often, but that's because our relationship is built on you and I just being very open in conversation anyway. So I think for a lot of couples that aren't just always naturally talking about what's great, what's not great, or like just in that kind of conversation naturally, then having an intentional check-in definitely weekly is important. And then like a bigger one, maybe monthly, an even bigger one, like the annual check-in.
yeah, and I was going to mention it later in the podcast, but I think now's even a good time, is just if you aren't self-revealing and aren't cleaning the glass regularly, and as a regular listener, and if you haven't, you might want to go through the episodes and find those ones as well, but you want to be regularly cleaning the glass and doing regular check-ins in this way to clear any resentment or build up or anything that's in the relationship. Because if you were going to sit down and do this relationship check-in with a whole bunch of stuff that's been unspoken about for a while, it's probably, I would probably say it's not going to go well. Let's just say that. It could potentially not go well. And to me, this sit down check-in is almost what couples would do, say, if they're in a mediation session, but because we're choosing to both sit down and do it, it's done with a lot of love, with honesty, with kindness, all those things. And I think if you're a couple that wants to do this but thinks maybe there's stuff in the way, might be better off checking in and having maybe even a mediation session, or, you know, reaching out to Charlotte and I for an agreement or a mediation session could be really powerful.
Yeah, I'll just second that. Like these intentional check-in conversations are really powerful, and you want to have a clean as you go policy. Like you want to be really committed to that, so that these kinds of conversations can be like, they can have like an expansive energy of like, well, what are we creating next year? And there's an openness to even touch on some of the more triggering parts, because it's not really new information, you know, like we're in the practice of cleaning our relationship as we go. So when we get to this check-in, you haven't thrown me something that I didn't see coming, you know, like we're really, no new information, but just getting really clear on how to have our relationship be even more powerful. And like, what's the action step around the things that we're wanting to create? Okay, so what does that actually look like? How are we going to make that practical?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest takeaway for me today, is like really getting that a relationship check-in is, what are the action steps? And this is a collaboration. This is like, it gets to be fun, it gets to be exciting, it gets to be teamwork. Like I know for so many people, we have worked with so many people in relationship, and people honestly feel like it's each individual is almost not against each other, but
it's you versus me.
Yeah, and I just think, if we were to come into this relationship check-in with our shields up and our swords ready about like what you've done and what I haven't done, and what are you going to take responsibility for because you haven't done this or that. It's just like, that's just a fight. A relationship check-in is not a fight or let's have a battle about the things that we've been putting off. It's actually, what are we doing moving forward?
And also, I think one of the things that came out of our check-in today is how are we supporting each other in the things that we say that we want to be showing up more for.
Yeah, absolutely. How do we be a team? I know for me that there's a part of me that's really self-reliant, so I don't naturally ask for things in my relationship. I tend to try my best to do that myself in a way. So I think for me, a relationship check-in, what I found to be really good, it's like I need to make sure that coming into that conversation, I've got things that I'm clear about. I still feel like maybe I'm unclear coming in, and I could spend even more time with what I truly desire, so I can speak more to what I want. And because what I want then gets to be met, and gets to be collaborated on. And what was it like for you? What did you notice that you maybe weren't expecting?
I suppose, just to be really honest, like we had a bit of tension come up this morning or today. So when we sat down for the relationship check-in, I noticed that I had to really be resourced or be resourcing myself, because I'm asking you a question like, what do you really love about the relationship? And then what's not so great? And because we'd had some stuff come up, hearing what was not so great, I could see that part of me that like wanted to then like take it all personally, because I was in a bit of a trigger energy. And so that makes me just realize for couples, it's like you have to be open, because you want to know what's been great, and like don't take what hasn't not been so great as the personal attack, because it is a collaborative conversation to create the relationship to be more of the standard you say. But it was just noticing like, okay, this conversation really is done best when both parties are resourced and hearts open. And I think just because there's just like a level of commitment that I have to like have our relationship be epic, I was able to hold my trigger and like really just help us both see, okay, well, if that hasn't felt so good, like what are we doing about it? So it's not just like, oh, that's not working, it's over. It's like, okay, that's not feeling the best. What can we actually do about it? So it's a productive conversation.
Yeah, thanks. And for the listeners, just want to reiterate or just remind is that we are definitely going to give you guys this questionnaire that we follow. So I really want this to be a podcast episode that inspires you and your partner, your beloved, to sit down and have this kind of conversation, because I feel like it's necessary. Like the truth of it is, and like going into that, like the honesty part is like, I'm sure people have an expectation that our relationship is just all smooth sailing. And I would say 90%, 95% of the time it is. But relationship is natural to have some conflict in it, some misunderstanding, some bumps along the way. Like we're not damaging our relationship. We're not doing anything that's breaking agreements with each other. But we are having tension. We do have things where there's misunderstandings or whatever it might be. And that is why we're in relationship. It gets to be healed there.
I also think it's because we're willing to have check-in conversations, and because we're willing to self-reveal, and we are willing to do what we teach, that we're able to like have moments of conflict and it not turn into resentment, or it not turn into breakdown, or it not turn into the end of our relationship, because we're both so committed to like really unpacking anything that has come up.
Yep.
And so we are going to give you guys, there's 2 PDFs, and like how I've broken it down is there's some questions for like a daily check-in, questions for a weekly check-in, and then there's a bigger list of questions for like the big check-in. And that's what we took ourselves through today. I think there's even like a little intimacy practice on that document. It's always, before you have these kind of conversations, it's great to actually just like connect, like eye to eye, heart to heart. Like, what do I love about you? What do I appreciate about you? And then you go into like the weeds of the relationship.
Yeah, no distractions. You're not doing this while you're driving. You're not doing this with a wine in the hand or something like that. You don't want alcohol infused, or, you know, clear mind, clear heart, connected, undistracted, you know, really dialed in with each other would be ideal.
And it's the time to put everything on the table. Like, I hate the idea of someone in relationship not voicing something. Like, it's like you get to have, like, we are willing to have these uncomfortable conversations. Not that the checking was uncomfortable, but like moments of like sharing what we're triggered about, because we both have such a high expectation of the standard we want our relationship to be. So it's like, what are you not speaking? Like, your intimacy gets to be amazing. The ways, like, your date nights get to be amazing. Like, the way you communicate gets to be amazing. Like, where do you need to upskill? Do you need to learn how to repair better? Do you need to learn, do you both, maybe one or both need to do some inner work and like heal some of the wounding that's playing out? It's like, what are you willing to commit to? This conversation can expose like what's there. And it's like, okay, what is your action step around it? Because relationship gets to be amazing, but there's an element of work.
Really is, you know, and it's like, even for us, like, you know, we're still committed to seeing a therapist for ourselves as well. Like, both of us as therapists, I feel like having someone to support and hold a neutral space for both of us to be understood, or to heal the parts that are really like we're coming up against in a repeatable way, I think is really important as well. So it's just, be prepared that the check-ins might expose something for both of you, and that's a good thing. That's actually something that you both then get to heal, repair, or work on in a relationship, which is ultimately what's going to happen in a relationship. Is stuff is going to come up, and it's the commitment for both individuals that are committed to each other to work on that stuff together.
I think that's what I always come back to with you and I. It's funny because our relationship is amazing in so many ways, but we realized today that we're actually in the midst of like what you'd call what we call the conflict phase. You know, like, we're 2.5 years in, we're not in the honeymoon anymore, and we definitely have majority authentic love. So what comes after the conflict phase? But like, our stuff comes up, and we have little moments that we loop, and it's like, we're in that part of relationship that we teach, and like, what are we going to do about it? But like, what I was trying to get to, the reason why I always can like kind of lean back and like, okay, is because I know that we're both so willing to work on our stuff.
Yeah.
Like, there's just such a willingness. And I know I always say to women, it's like, if you're in a relationship with someone who's willing and you're willing, then that's because you're going to have to surrender to an imperfect partner. There's no perfect human that's going to come along and make it all better. You know, like, Lindsay's pretty close. And we have our stuff, but we're both so committed.
Yeah, and you might have that experience in the beginning where it feels perfect, but even that, like, that is a sign that it's like, no one actually is perfect. You become your best selves together in relationship and make it work. That's really what it is. So, honoring you for all your parts, and I love you so much, sweetheart. I had such a beautiful time with you doing that check-in, and just, again, just really inspired for our collaboration that we get to have, and it getting to be good, like checking in with like, when are we going to do our intimacy practices, and when are we doing this, and how do we want to do that? It was just like, it was so cool. It was so cool in that.
And like, my masculine can be quite strong around structure, and now I feel like we have lots of structure moving forward in the new year around like creating the time for each other. And I like what you said to me earlier, or you might have just said it before, around being in service to the relationship. Like, yes. This is bigger than just me getting what I want and you getting what you want. It's like, what does the relationship actually need from both of us? And so we make that a priority. Absolutely. And so I look forward to sitting down and putting it in my calendar that we have our date nights here, and we have our conversations here, and our check-ins here, and our Shibari dates here, and like just showing up for that.
I'm looking forward to your delicious cooking.
I did offer once a week cooking because he bought me a cast iron pot for Christmas. What I always wanted, but I'm not the cook, but once a week
Very good.
I'm going to do it.
Very good. Love you, Critter. So, if you're interested and if you're keen, we would love to send you our check-in.
I think what I'm going to do is put it in a link in
Yep.
the show notes. It'll ask for you to subscribe to our beautiful email list. So once you do that, you will receive a PDF, and yeah, they're yours, and use them. They're powerful.
And if you're a couple that are, wanting to do that but feeling like you need some extra support, I would love, and we would love to support you in that as well, that it gets to be an amazing experience. Charlotte and I work with couples all the time. We do this exact thing where we help couples. If you think about it, the agreements, the check-in is almost like creating beautiful, powerful agreements with each other that you get to collaborate and move forward with. So it gets to be good. Yeah.
I think that's really important, because often we'll task couples with this and they'll sit down and it just becomes a fight. It's like, that's pretty normal if you guys have got a lot of resentment and like water under the bridge. So a mediation session is really smart because we can hold that space. So yeah, you can find Lindsay where? Same as always.
At Lindsay B on Instagram.
And I am Charlie S. Hannah on Instagram, or the Embodied Union Instagram.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think do the thing. Do it before New Year's. Set it up. Make it powerful.
2025, absolutely.
Year of
Let's
love.
go. Love you, Critter.
Love you.